Hi, everybody. Today is Wednesday, June 18th, 2025, and our friend David Pyne is back with us. Welcome back, David.
Hey, Nima, great to be back.
David, let's start with the conflict in the Middle East between Iran and Israel and Donald Trump and the way that he's dealing with this situation in the Middle East. Here is what he said in his latest comment on the issue of the war between Iran and Israel.
Whether you are moving closer or you believe the U.S. is moving closer to striking Iranian nuclear facilities. Where's your mindset on that?
I can't say that, right? You don't seriously think I'm going to answer that question? Will you strike the Iranian nuclear component? And what time exactly, sir? Sir, would you strike it? Would you please inform us so we can be there and watch? I mean, you don't know that I'm going to even do it. You don't know. I may do it. I may not do it. I mean, nobody knows what I'm going to do. I can tell you this, that Iran's got a lot of trouble, and they want to negotiate. And I said, why didn't you negotiate with me before? All this death and destruction. Why didn't you negotiate? I said to the people, why didn't you negotiate with me 2 weeks ago? You could have done fine. You would have had a country. It's very sad to watch this. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. It's so, everyone thought it was going to be the reverse. I didn't think so. And I was telling them, you gotta do something. You gotta negotiate. And at the end, last minute, they said, no, we're not going to do that. And they got hit. Remember 60 days? And then came the 60. 61 is going to become a very famous number. That was one hell of a hit. That first hit, that was one hell of a hit. Not sustainable, to be honest. That's where it ended. It ended on the first night. Yes.
Is it too late, though? Do you think it's too late to?
Yeah. David, what's going on with Donald Trump?
Well, I think the Trump presidency has been hijacked by the neocons, neocon warmongers. Obviously, the Israeli first neocons that put their allegiance to Israel above that to their own country. Folks like Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, and the interim National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. The UN ambassador nominee John Radcliffe, CIA, Mike Huckabee, ambassador to Israel, and many others. Unfortunately. In fact, I mean, it's gotten so bad that, even J.D. Vance was saying, if Trump decides to start World War III and bomb Iran, we just need to trust that he knows what he's doing. But the fact is he doesn't know what he's doing. He's completely clueless. He's acting like a deranged lunatic. And I say that reluctantly as a longtime Trump supporter and Trump voter, because I trusted him to keep his promise to keep the U.S. out of wars, to stop wars and prevent other wars from happening. But he's acted the exact opposite as president. He's continued Biden's war in Ukraine. He's continued to fund and arm the Zelensky regime that's brutally, murdering political opponents and rounding up innocent young men off the street to draft for the army service, which is basically a death sentence. And he's facilitated Israel from in breaking the Gaza ceasefire and essentially de facto annexing and occupying Gaza in perpetuity. And now, worst of all, he greenlighted Israel to bomb Iran in this massive, comprehensive manner, and is even threatening. And it looks like he has all intentions of joining the war himself with massive U.S. bombing strikes on Iran directly.
David, I talk with many experts in the field of the way that the United States would be able to bomb Iranian nuclear facility, maybe do something about it, destroy all of these things that are the main rhetorics on the part of Netanyahu, on the part of Israelis and the people who are supporting Netanyahu in the United States. But do you feel that how could they convince Donald Trump to go with that? Because they were talking, they were supposed to talk on Sunday, and they started attacking Iran. It seems that Donald Trump somehow felt that he wants the upper hand, that he may get the upper hand in the negotiations with these attacks.
Yeah, I mean, President Trump is operating on false assumptions around, just all kinds of wrong assumptions. One assumption is Iran is if we don't bomb them, they'll develop nuclear weapons. No, they've had nuclear weapons for a long time, and they've been responsible. They've been deterred from using them by U.S. and Israel's massive nuclear superiority over them. There was never any threat that they were going to use nukes. There was never any threats that they would give nukes to terrorists, as Netanyahu falsely claimed. And Trump just really, he just made false statements in that last clip that you showed. As he stated, Iran was scheduled to have a 6th round of talks just a few days ago on Sunday, and now it appears they're going to resume talks. They've two Iranian flights have landed to meet with U.S. officials. Trump is reportedly considering dispatching Vice President Vance to lead those negotiations. One would hope that peace would prevail, but President Trump he operates under the delusion that the more bullying and the more terrorist sounding he gets, that's going to strike fear in the Ayatollah and Iranian leaders, and they'll just cave and unconditionally surrender, as Trump stated. And of course, we know what unconditional surrender means. We saw after Nazi Germany surrendered, we continued mass murdering of the German people after the war with starvation campaign, and many millions of innocent Germans died following the unconditional surrender. So unconditional surrender essentially is a catchword for Iranians to fight to the death. If that's the peace we're offering, the peace of the grave, the peace of starvation and complete end of their statehood, and essentially with the executing the Ayatollah is what that implies, is they're going to keep fighting, and this war could continue for years. Unfortunately, Iran has capabilities that the U.S. leaders may not be aware of. They have super EMP satellites over the U.S. and apparently threaten to use them. Just today, the Ayatollah himself threatened that if the U.S. were to bomb Iran directly, Iran will inflict irreparable damage on the United States. So what does that mean? It could either mean nuclear weapons, or it could mean super EMP weapons, possibly cyber attack, but probably not, because cyber attacks, have a possibility of repairing critical infrastructure. So that was a veiled threat, I think, to detonate a nuclear weapon over the United States. And why is Trump willing to risk the loss, potential deaths of 250 million Americans over a year that could die from starvation and malnutrition related diseases and civil strife following such an attack? Trump is behaving like a madman. He's just got off the rails.
Do you see that Netanyahu is going to gain anything from the attacks? Because this was the final goal. This was the end game of Netanyahu. He wanted to attack Iran for such a long time, and he achieved it. He could achieve what he wanted. But the outcome of this achievement, how do you evaluate that?
Well, if you look at battlefield successes, I think Israel's attacks have been masterful. They decapitated Iran's top military leadership, maybe 8 to 11, I think it was 11 Iranian generals at this point, from 2 to major general on up. They're the nuclear scientists they've taken out. They've, inflicted serious damage on Iranian missile production capabilities, air defenses, and have done some damage to the, not as much as people say, to their nuclear program. But meanwhile, their underground nuclear silos remain completely untouched. They're deep underground. Some are, according to some reports, up to half a mile deep. The U.S. has nothing comparable. We don't have anything half a mile deep. And even our GBU 57s that would be dropped by B2s that have a 30,000 pound payload, explosive essentially, that would, that can only go like 300 feet deep, so we can't get to 2,600 feet. So the bottom line is Israel has no capability to destroy Iran's nuclear arsenal. The U.S. has a limited capability to destroy Iran's nuclear arsenal, but some of it's going to survive. And if Iran wanted to, they could simply, after some kind of ceasefire, or maybe even before, they could simply park a couple of nuclear-tipped MRBMs and put them on a container ship off the coast of D.C. and fire off some MRBMs, and we would have no defense. The U.S. has no defense against ballistic missiles, unless we have Aegis cruisers and destroyers on scene, and that's pretty rare.
David, you think that Donald Trump would sabotage his presidency? Because so far, when you look at the way that he came from literally talking about not being interested in any sort of war with Russia, with China, with Iran in the Middle East, the least was the case of Iran. He said, I remember vividly, he said during various interviews, he said, I want nothing with Iran. I want to reach some sort of deal. And you see Donald Trump in a position that he's literally at war with all of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's Joe Biden 2.0, except he's even worse. I mean, I never thought I'd see a worse foreign policy president than Biden, but certainly in terms of the Middle East, Trump is much worse. He's much more dangerous. He's much more reckless. Certainly Biden was a little worse on Russia and Ukraine. Obviously, there has been some meaningful improvement, hopefully lasting improvement with U.S.-Russia relations, but we're still helping Ukraine, attack them, and I don't think Putin appreciates that. And I think that could lead, if we were to bomb Iran directly, Russia and China might join the war. Not necessarily in the Middle East. Russia could simply do something a lot more major. They could, pop off a nuke or more against Ukraine. They could attack NATO bases to help distract the U.S. effort against Iran. China almost inevitably would invade and blockade Taiwan, I think, within a matter of a few weeks if we were to start bombing Iran. So really, Trump's not only would Trump's foreign policy become self-defeating. Essentially, he would sabotage his own grand strategy, which was supposedly peace through strength, and making Russia a strategic partner against not against China, but to counter to disrupt the Sino-Russian military alliance. But he threatens to end his presidency with the destruction of the United States itself. And does he really want to be the president that not only didn't stop the wars, but he essentially provoked and caused World War III and the destruction of his own country? Americans aren't going to remember him fondly, even if we only lose a couple million Americans. I mean, he'll be the worst president in American history. He'll be impeached. He'll be disgraced, and really his whole presidency is riding on this, I think.
David, the similarities between the two attacks on Russia and Iran in recent days are so astonishing, somehow unbelievable. Before talking happening between Russia and Ukraine, they attacked Russian nuclear bombers. They brought in some drones and they attacked Russia before talks. In the same way, before the talks happening between Iran and the United States, Israel did the same. And from the intelligence coming out of Iran, these people who were collaborating with Israelis, they're talking about 10 years of collaboration and preparing just to be prepared to attack Iran. It seems that the plan was somehow prepared on the part of Israelis. They didn't know when would be that particular moment to attack Iran. But they used it before in Ukraine against Russia. It's unbelievable. When you look at this, who's behind this? Is it Israel? Is it Mossad? Is it MI6? Is it the United Kingdom is running all this show? It's unbelievable what's going on. And I would imagine Russia would think, what's going on? Look at Putin. Look at the leaders in Iran. Look at the leader in China. Do they really understand the gravity of what's going on?
I think U.S. leaders, Trump included, they continue to delude themselves into thinking that this is a unipolar world, international order that we live in. It's been multipolar or bipolar for a long time. I mean, I've been arguing since Russia and China became allies back in 2001 that it was a bipolar world. That's the moment it changed from I don't know what it was before, but it became a bipolar world once again, just as it was with the U.S. and the Soviet Union during the Cold War, and we just didn't pay attention. I mean, obviously, China wasn't nearly as powerful. 24 years ago, it was much weaker, but still substantial in terms of economic and military might. But Russia, of course, with its massive nuclear forces and strong military, was still powerful, and the two countries combined were able to counterbalance the United States. Today, it's they together overmatch the U.S. in terms of military power, largest army, navy, air force, ballistic missile force. China has all that. Russia has vast raw materials and up to anywhere from 4 to 7 times more operational nuclear weapons than we do. So we really are behaving like we're the most powerful country in the world, and we're not. We're probably third largest, certainly second largest economy, probably second largest manufacturing capability. But China is much more powerful in terms of industrial potential. Economically, not as much, just maybe 20% larger. But this is a world in which restraint is called for. I've said often in my interviews over the last few months that U.S. national security is predicated on a careful balance of not only military power but also diplomatic efforts and diplomatic heft. And Trump has failed at that equation. It's in the U.S. national security interest to have good relations with all of our enemies: Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. And when we do that, we minimize the chances of inadvertent escalation to a full-scale war. And instead, he's relishing on threatening the life of Ayatollah Khomeini, the head of state and also religious leader of Iran, and he's doing so in a very adolescent, almost bullying or, like I said, terror sounding way that's really unbecoming the president of the United States. I mean, how can we claim to be the center of freedom in the world, or law? This is lawlessness. This is he's planning to attack Iran reportedly without congressional authorization. So this is a violation of our Constitution. It's a violation of international law. We'd be an unprovoked aggressor. Israel started the war, and if we join the war on the side of the aggressor, I mean, maybe we should have joined the war with Russia against Ukraine. I mean, it's the same idea, and yet people just don't see it. But you're absolutely right. Israel planned this attack probably 20 years. I mean, they've been itching to attack Iran since the Bush presidency, and every president from Bush to Biden denied them authorization to do so. And if all Trump had to say is no, we're not going to support you at all. You're getting no offensive intelligence. You're getting no logistical support. We'll cut off arms to you. I mean, Netanyahu would have ran away crying. He would have been like, okay, I guess we can't do anything, or I guess we'll have to wait for the next president, or maybe we can, change Trump's mind. And sadly, that's what happened, because Trump actually did veto it. Initially, reports were coming in on April 7th in the White House that Trump actually did veto the Israeli attack, and he even fired his national security advisor for plotting the attack without, with Netanyahu and General Kirill, I think, without Trump's permission. So, this is the problem with the Trump presidency. At least with Biden, there was consistency. He was just consistently bad, consistently a warmonger. You never had doubt that he was going to try to make peace or do anything good. With Trump, he had all this amazing rhetoric, peace rhetoric, pro-peace, end the wars. And then he's just gradually been captured, from this hostile, neocon faction that he's allowed to take control of his presidency and, really hijack it. And it's very, as an American and as a longtime Trump supporter, it's very sad to see.
Washington Post reported that Israel will only be able to maintain shooting down Iranian ballistic missiles for 10 or 12 more days if Iran maintains its attack level. And if that would be the case for Israel, do you feel that something would happen to Netanyahu if Israel is not capable of maintaining the war the way that is happening right now, a war of attrition with Iran? Or Iran decides to escalate, firing more missiles toward Israel? That would be devastating for Netanyahu and his decision on going to war with Iran to fight Iran. Do you think that after all he's gonna gain from this? He's gonna lose from this sort of decision on his part?
No, I think he's going to lose. I mean, obviously he's had short-term gains, but the war in Gaza is really unpopular. We don't get the reports from that. They've lost like 12,000 Israeli troops dead and wounded. All of his wars, and now this one could be the worst of all. I mean, it could lead to the deaths of tens of thousands of Israelis, perhaps much more. Obviously, if Iran wanted to nuke Israel and wipe it off the map and was willing to take a risk with its own survival, Israel would be gone. They'd lose hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions dead, and this is all for nothing. This war, Netanyahu's war, is being fought on a false pretense. The false pretense being that Iran is mere days away from getting nukes. But the fact is, as I mentioned, in all likelihood, they likely have had nukes for a long time, and they've used them responsibly, meaning that they haven't used them in an aggressive way against Western powers. And there's no surprise there, because nuclear deterrence has worked with our most dedicated enemies, from the Soviet Union, Communist China, North Korea, now Iran. No one's going to use nukes unless we attack them in a very severe way, and that's what Trump's threatening to do. He's threatening to provoke a potential nuclear war. Now, do I think that Iran would use nukes even if we went after them like crazy? No, I don't think they would. But I do think that they might use a super EMP attack, because that is, there's a level of plausible deniability, because we have multiple countries that have super EMP weapons orbiting over the U.S. Super EMP satellites, not just Iran, but North Korea, Russia, and China. So, Iran could deny it and say that, it was the Russians or something, or the Chinese or North Koreans. We would not be able to know that, or we might not. It's possible we could. Or a massive cyber attack. And those are both things that could potentially bring down the government of the United States and cause us to collapse, and be vulnerable to invasion, amphibious invasion from China. I mean, a lot of worst case scenarios. Our military could melt away, and the world wouldn't be safer. It'd be that's the real issue here, is that Trump is going against U.S. national security interests. He's making the U.S. Americans far more unsafe and insecure with these crazy policies that he has with Iran.
The policy of, you mentioned the assassination of Iranian scientists in this attack on Israeli attack on Iran, it somehow diminishes or destroys the role of international communities like IAEA, because Iranian have obtained some documents from Israeli nuclear program. As they mentioned, they published some of the documents before this attack started, and the attack came and we didn't learn much about it, because they're literally fighting Israel right now. But it shows how IAEA was somehow participating in providing information to Israelis. This is literally, look at UN, look at IAEA, they're destroying everything. We came a long way to build all these international communities to communicate, to get a better world, but they're destroying them by using them against the enemy they have in their mind.
That's absolutely right. President Biden talked about the need to fight Russia and Ukraine to preserve the so-called rules-based liberal international order. The problem is, ever since we designed this liberal international order, I guess, and after the fall of the Soviet Union in '91, we get to violate the rules. If we make the rules, we get to violate them with impunity. We saw that in Iraq. We saw that in the Kosovo War, where we bombed Yugoslavia into submission and changed the borders of Europe by force for the first time in 50 years since the end of World War II, and many times since. With Libya, with Syria, with Iraq, twice. Well, really the second time mainly. In Afghanistan to some extent. So, we're not, that's why I was just watching all of this with my wife last night. And I told her, you know what, we're not the good guys anymore. If we're bombing other countries for no reason, we're the bad guys. And do I think that we're an evil country? No, but we're a warmongering country, and we're an aggressor country. We're as much or more of an aggressor than the Russians. I mean, look at all the countries we bombed or invaded. Russia's invaded exactly one country in the last 34 years. How many countries have we bombed and invaded? Most of which have been for no reason or for no good reason. So, in terms of rogue states, I was talking with a fellow conservative friend of mine, and he's like, "Well, we have to finish the job with Iran because they're a rogue state." And I'm like, who's the real rogue state? How do you define rogue states? A rogue state to me is a country that attacks and bombs and invades other countries at will, with no compunction for international law. And if you look at what country is doing that the most, it's Israel. So, and we're supporting Israel. Biden and now Trump have given them a blank check of U.S. Military support to invade or bomb whoever they want. And Netanyahu is going crazy with it, and he's trying to start World War III. And Trump needs to, pull back and declare neutrality and say the U.S. is not going to be involved. We're going to cut off all security assistance until you negotiate a ceasefire with Iran and pull your troops out of Gaza and implement the Gaza peace deal. And you'll never have a blank check with us again.
There are a lot of discussions right now in the United States among the people who voted for Donald Trump. And here is what Tucker Carlson said to Steve Bannon.
I think he's a deeply humane, kind person. And I am saying this because I'm really afraid that my country's going to be further weakened by this. I think we're going to see the end of American empire, obviously. Other nations would like to see that, and this is a perfect way to scuttle the USS America on the shoals of Iran. But it's also going to end, I believe, Trump's presidency and effectively end it. And so that's why I'm saying this.
What do you mean by that? That's coming.
And there are people, they're literally concerned about the future for the United States because they had some sort of hope that Donald Trump would bring some sort of change to the foreign policy of the United States. It seems that all sort of hopes just disappeared from the scene. And I don't know if these people would be able to put pressure on Donald Trump, at least to maybe pressure him or force him to change his mind.
Well, I think that's the answer. I mean, what we're seeing right now, if Trump falls through in his plans to bomb Iran, I mean, that's how empires die. We talk about Afghanistan as the graveyard of empires. It might end up being Iran for the U.S. empire, and I guess to put a fine point on it, I would call the U.S. an imperial republic. Much like France. France was an empire and a republic at the same time. We are as well. We don't have a king. We don't have an emperor formally. We don't have a dictator. Although Trump does seem increasingly autocratic, at least with regards to Iran. But it's a dangerous situation for the U.S. and the world, and all the countries in the neighborhood of the U.S. and Iran and the Middle East. And you're absolutely right. Tucker Carlson and many others, so-called MAGA conservatives or America First conservatives, they need to band together, and we need to do a maximum pressure campaign against Donald Trump and essentially say, hey, if you bomb Iran, we're out. We're not going to support you anymore, and you're on your own. And because I think Trump, if it's just Tucker Carlson, he'll call him a whack job or whatever, and Tulsi Gabbard, he'll say, I'm never listening to her again. I don't care what she says. She's the director of national intelligence, and who cares about intelligence? I'm just going to do what I want when I want, like a spoiled brat. But no, I think that's really the key. That's really the only way we can rescue the Trump presidency and really save the world from a third world war is if all of Trump's supporters have a maximum pressure campaign, not only against Trump, but also to influence those around him, especially folks that are sympathetic to peace and truly want peace, like Vice President J.D. Vance.
What has happened in the aftermath of the Israeli attack on Iran? We've learned that Donald Trump talked with Vladimir Putin on the phone, and they were talking about the situation with the case of Iran and Israel, and the case of Ukraine as well. But the day after the talk, Donald Trump has decided, Maria Zakharova, we've learned from the Russian part that Maria Zakharova said that they're just, the United States unilaterally canceled the talks that they were supposed in April. They have agreed to have these sort of talks to de-escalate the situation, to better to improve the relationship between the United States and Russia, and they have decided just literally leave the scene and just cancel all the talks. What's going on in Ukraine that as time goes by, it seems to me that it's getting much more complicated, David? Who's forcing Donald Trump? Is that the establishment in the United States? Is that the way that the European Union is somehow manipulating the situation in Ukraine?
Well, I think it's the neocons that he's hired to populate his senior cabinet ranks. Again, folks like Rubio, Ratcliffe, Waltz to a lesser extent now that he's got demoted, Huckabee, Keith Kellogg, General Keith Kellogg's bad news, and maybe even other folks like maybe Jack Keane, General Keane, or other former U.S. Military leaders, but especially in Congress. I mean, there's so many horrible, like there's 82, I think, U.S. senators out of 100 that have signed on to the secondary sanctions against Russia that would increase sanctions on any country that trades with Russia from to 500% or even 1,000%. Essentially, that would cause a massive recession in the U.S. Essentially, it would cut off all trade with China, basically, and we would suffer greatly for no purpose because we know that Russia's economy is really it's gone way up since the war began. Despite massive Western sanctions, it's gone from being the 6th largest in the world to the 4th largest by purchase power parity. Their growth rate has been much higher than ours has. Germany and other countries in Europe, and of course the U.S. Have gone into some degree of recession, while the U.S. or the Russian economy has been booming, about 3 to 4% growth rate per year over the last 3 years. So. Those are the folks really that are behind, they're causing Trump or advising Trump to pursue the Biden policy, continue Biden's war, and doing it in a very deceptive and manipulative way. It's very discouraging again to see President Trump, who acts like a strong president, but then he gets manipulated. He gets manipulated by not by low level White House staffers like Biden did, where he couldn't even answer a question. But by senior staffers and members of Congress in the Senate, powerful members of the Senate and the House, almost all of which are telling him to, keep fighting Russia and support these deep strikes against Russia and Ukraine. As you mentioned, Operation Spiderweb, which according to Ukraine, disabled or destroyed 34% of Russia's bomber fleet. Now, the Russian sources that I've heard are saying it was more like 4 to 5%. Realistically, it's probably around 10% or less. But it's still just imagine how a U.S. president would react if Canada were a Russian satellite and they were using Russian missiles, nuclear capable missiles without nukes to bomb our cities, to bomb maybe D.C. and New York City, and which is I think just 320 miles away from Montreal or Toronto, I think. within range of the same range missiles that we provided to Russia. And then, of course, our nuclear bomber bases, B-52 and B-2 bomber bases. And we they were able to destroy some of our nuclear arsenal. How would we respond to that? I think we pop off a few nukes in Canada and teach them a lesson, and then maybe invade and annex them, just like Trump seems to want to do. So we need to put ourselves in their shoes, and we need to behave more rationally and responsibly, and we need to de-escalate across in all of these theaters across the world. I mean, China's primed and ready to invade Taiwan. Is that something we're ready for? Are we going to respond as stupidly and try to defend Taiwan in an unwinnable war, just to say that we stood for freedom, and then have our country destroyed over it? I mean, this is madness. All of these neocon policies are madness they're going to get us destroyed sooner rather than later. I'm hoping it's much later, but we need to pressure all of those Trump White House folks that are even on the edge of between America first and America last, and get them to pursue a peace through strength policy that's real peace, not this fake peace, essentially war. Peace through strength has been redefined by neoconservatives to mean war, and war through weakness, and that's something that needs to end.
Do you feel that Donald Trump would somehow convince the people who are in his administration, like Tulsi Gabbard, for example, that she's you've mentioned that she said before that Iran is not pursuing the path to nuclear weapons, all of that, and Donald Trump said he doesn't care what she's talking about. He just made his mind. He wants to do whatever he has in his mind. And there are rumors that she said if Donald Trump decides to go to war with Iran, she's going to resign from her position. Do you feel that Donald Trump would care about these people? Would literally care about how important are these people to even look at the election, look at what has happened in the United States in the process of the election that Donald Trump got elected? Many people helped him. It seems that as time goes by, he's literally losing those people. And if Tulsi Gabbard resigns, that would be the one of the most devastating problems for Donald Trump or his administration.
Yeah, I mean, Tulsi Gabbard, she's not a mega conservative. She's a kind of a America First moderate, which is kind of unusual in the MAGA world, where she's, kind of much more of an independent than a Republican conservative. But she's a patriot. She's a lieutenant colonel in the military. She's, been intelligence for most of her career, military intelligence in the Army. And, she does carry weight. She is popular, not like J.D. Vance or Tucker Carlson or something like that. But she's an important figure that MAGA conservatives respect. But the message that we need that everyone who opposes war in Iran and has influence with any member of, senior member of the Trump White House or the president especially, is that Trump will pay a price. We will. Basically, MAGA conservatives will stay home on election day in November 2026, and allow the Democrats to have a massive landslide victory in the midterm elections, and that's actually a more likely outcome than the Republicans holding Congress. Right now, if the election were held, Republicans would hold Congress, but historically, we lose I think it's 28 House seats. The president in power will lose 28 House seats and 4 Senate seats. So if you just do the math, I mean, we would lose both. Historically speaking, if the election were the historical average, mean average, we would certainly lose control of both houses. I think it's more likely we lose the House almost for sure, and the Senate, it's kind of 50-50. But this is the kind of thing that's going to really demoralize the base. That Trump's breaking all his promises, especially for peace. I mean, that's more, avoiding World War III is a much more important priority than getting the big, beautiful bill across the finish line. So, or even kicking out millions of illegal immigrant criminals, in securing the border. So because our entire, not only our economy, but our potential national existence rests upon peace with our nuclear adversaries. So I do think that's key.
David, before wrapping up this session, how do you see the role of European Union in the sort of decision that Donald Trump is making for the case of Ukraine or even the case of the Middle East? Are they somehow influencing Donald Trump positively, negatively for both cases in Ukraine and in the Middle East?
Well, I think the EU has been enormously unhelpful in trying to sabotage all of Trump's initial peace efforts. And of course, they were successful. Zelensky, of course, being the biggest obstacle to peace, with Trump unable to even get him to make a single concession for peace with Russia in terms of peace terms. But the EU has been collaborating with Zelensky all along, first to try to avert even a ceasefire, and now to avert any peace prospects with Russia. The UK and France are still talking about sending tens of thousands of troops into Ukraine to protect western and central Ukraine, the west side of the Dnipro River, which Russia stated would be basically almost a nuclear red line. Essentially, would be a declaration of war against the Russian Federation. They would respond by annihilating British and French forces, which, according to Defense Secretary Hegseth, would not be covered by Article 5 because they'd be operating outside of NATO, the NATO mandate. So, Britain and France want to go to war with Russia. I mean, that's their right. They can do so, but they would have to do so without Trump's support. And I really don't think Trump would support them. Would go to war for Britain and France if Russia were to do so. But so that they've been very unhelpful on that front. In terms of Iran, I think Macron has said he's come out very strongly against a U.S. attack on Iran, and has also criticized Israel for its unprovoked naked aggression against Iran as well. Starmer, apparently the UK has been helped to greenlight that attack and has been supporting the Israeli assault on Iran with intelligence and other measures. So there's kind of a division, is what I'm saying, with the EU. The Germans, I think they're supportive of the Israeli attack on Iran, but I'm not sure. So there's no united front with the EU in terms of the bombing of Iran at this time.
Yeah. Thank you so much, David, for being with us today. Great pleasure, as always.
Thanks, Nima. Always a pleasure for me as well. Hope you have a great day.
Take care.
You too.